25 years ago this week, Pokemon Red and Green were released in Japan, and a global media franchise was born. It's difficult to explain just how big Pokemon was in the 90s unless you lived through it. I was born in 1992, so I was the prime age to live through that frenzy as a child. Playing the games, collecting the cards, watching the anime, going to the movies. Pokemon became so big in my school that they once banned bringing Pokemon cards to school because they were becoming such a distraction. Of course, that just forced the Pokemon card craze underground. Black market Pokemon cards. There were other fads that came after, Yu-Gi-Oh! And Beyblades most memorably, and Power Rangers before them, but they could never match the sheer insanity that came with Pokemon. It really was a whole new world we lived in. It's amazing then that a JRPG, which was still a relatively niche genre in the West in 1996, even in spite of all of the Super Nintendo classics being released at the time, took the world by storm like that. Sure, it was certainly helped along by the success of the anime in particular, but it was the world of the original Kanto region in those games that captured the imagination of millions and millions of kids across the globe. I've spent much of the last 2 weeks spending hours bouncing between over 10 different Pokemon games to try and capture exactly why and how that happened. Pokemon has always been the backbone of Nintendo's handheld systems. From the Game Boy, to the GBA, to the DS, to the 3DS, and even to a degree with the hybrid Switch, Pokemon has been the franchise that sustains them. Given those systems have always been targeted at younger audiences, it is pretty much guaranteed that Pokemon has been the entry-level series for so many gamers. If you owned one of those systems, you probably owned a Pokemon game. Just look at the sales charts. It's funny how you see the nostalgia for each individual generation evolve as the people who first played them grow up. We've seen the waves from Gen 1 through Gen 5 now, and it's probably going to be the case that even Gen 6, which wasn't particularly well received at the time, will be the next to be looked back on fondly. That speaks to just how central each generation of Pokemon has been to so many young people, and how foundational it has been as a series to so many people's early experiences playing video games. From Kanto, to Johto, to Hoenn, to Sinnoh, to Unova, to Kalos, to Alola, to Galar. These regions are many of the first video game worlds we truly got lost in, that we know every inch of. For a series to not only achieve that, but for that feeling to persist over multiple generations, is remarkably impressive. Formula has been central to the Pokemon series from the beginning. You start in a small town with 4 houses. You meet a professor named after a tree. You choose between a fire type, water type, or grass type. You fight your rival, who is either an arrogant jerk, a mean jerk, helicopter rivals who will never leave you alone, or the best boy. You travel the world to be the best like no one ever was. You catch Pokemon, you visit towns, traverse caves, walk through dark caves stubbornly not using flash. You do it again. You walk through fog, stubbornly not using defog. You walk through forests, you do it again. You do it again. You fight gym leaders and win badges. You foil an evil team's plot. You go to the Pokemon League, you beat the Elite Four, you beat the champion, you become the champion, and you do a little fun post-game content. That is, at its core, every single mainline Pokemon game. Rinse and repeat. The post-game sections change, the story changes, the region and characters and Pokemon change, but that core has generally remained the same. For a series where evolution is a core mechanic, the games have been stubbornly slow to evolve over the last 25 years. Only in the last 2 generations have we seen the series even begin to dip its toe in any meaningful new waters. With that said though, let's run through the Pokemon timeline real quick and track what made each group of games special. And that a game like Pokemon Red and Blue, with what felt like such a large, expansive world at the time with 151 playable characters, could fit on a Game Boy cartridge, felt like magic. From the beginning, the portability of these vast adventures really added to the mystique. You could take your Pokemon with you anywhere, on a car trip, on holidays, to school, until again, they were banned. Your Bulbasaur lived in your pocket. It made the game and creatures that lived in it feel all the more personal. It deepened the bond with them. And that's where the name of the series comes from after all. They knew what the selling point was from the very start. All of the component parts of what made the game special are there from the very beginning. You'll brush up against some of the old quality of life issues like inventory space, having to go into your menu to use every HM. and critical hits being really broken because of being tied to speed, which means you can just spam Razor Leaf on everything and it's a pretty much guaranteed critical hit. It's great, until somebody uses that against you, in which it's terrible and the game is broken and bad. Or you get trapped in Wrath forever, that's also not great. But the rest is the same Pokemon you know and love, and is just as joyously replayable to this day. Nostalgia for Gen 1 has persisted for a reason. These original games were instant classics. Gen 2 and 3 continued to build out the basics of the mechanics. Gen 2, which still stands as my personal favourite generation, I love all of the Pokemon in that generation so much. Delibird is the best Pokemon, followed by Chikorita, but it's a really close contest there. Great Pokemon, Gen 2 rules. It features a wonderful world and what remains the standard for the best post-game content. It added Color, 2 new types with Steel and Dark, and held items while continuing to refine the fundamentals. Gen 3, IGN's deep hatred of water aside, deepened the gameplay with abilities and added variety with double battles. And then the core formula was largely set. If you can't tell, I'm breaking these sections up into shorter paragraphs so I can include more music. That's the true depth of my scripting of these videos. It's like, how many different songs from Pokemon can I fit in by breaking it into smaller paragraphs? Generations 4 through 6 can then be grouped together as the games in which Game Freak had mastery over their formula. They knew exactly what these games should be, and rather than really continue to push the series forward, instead they produced likeable, polished games. You notice some things going back to them. Gen 4 feels a little too slow, but has a really tremendous sense of place, while Gen 5's decision to only include new Pokemon in the main story was an inspired choice, complemented by the game's sheer love of bridges. It's easy to understand then why Gen 4 and Gen 5 are currently among the best regarded in the series. They had all the quality of life improvements and knowledge of what works in the Pokemon formula, before that formula became overly tired. They are lovely adventures with great Pokemon designs and superb music. It's equally easy to see why Gen 6 was sort of the breaking point. The point at which the series should have moved forward, but didn't. There are only so many times you can play the same thing before you lose interest, and Gen 6 is very much a more hand-holding version of more of the same. Playing back through it for this video, X and Y are the games I felt most like doing an individual video on. There's just a lot to dig into about why those games are subtly different from what came before, in a way that I don't think is particularly good. The degree to which your friends and rivals constantly swarm you is just suffocating. You can barely walk 10 feet down the road before another one of them will pop up. It'll be interesting though to see how the nostalgia cycle treats this game when it gets around to it, when the generation who played this as their first Pokemon game realize, hey guys, I liked this game, because we're all gonna like the first Pokemon game we grew up with. It's the way life works. Gen 4 through 6 and beyond also increased the emphasis on story to varying degrees of success, rather than the core plot revolving around simply foiling a relatively characterless evil crime organization like Team Rocket. Those evil team plans got increasingly elaborate to include eternal life and alternate dimensions and all sorts of nonsense that I'm kind of okay with it being in a Pokemon game, but it's not what I'm playing these games for. The high watermark is still Gen 5's legitimately emotionally affecting story of N's desire to liberate Pokemon, only to be manipulated by Team Plasma. And the idea of a castle just being built under the Pokemon League is like the coolest thing. That's a cool story development, more of that Pokemon. Gen 7 and 8 then were the modest steps into the future. Gen 7 messed with the long-standing gym structure, introducing the trials. Let's Go finally allowed Pokemon to roam free on the map, while Gen 8 began pushing Pokemon toward an open world with the wild areas. The series has been slowly but surely moving forward, perhaps not at the pace people would like, but it'll get there. Pokemon Legends Arceus seems to be pushing the series in exactly the direction people want. We will reach a stage where some people will be nostalgic for that old Pokemon formula when it comes the day that games like that are no longer made, in a very similar way to how people pine for the old Dungeons and Items Zelda formula following Breath of the Wild. I've always insisted there is basically no such thing as a bad Pokemon game. Even Pokemon X and Y, which personally for me is the least interesting, is a pretty good game. It's a rock-solid RPG. The core mechanics that have made up Pokemon since Red and Blue are so simple and timeless that they can be reapplied in different settings, and they will, at the very least, make for a fun game. Collect cute and colourful creatures, build a team to battle in a simple on the surface but tons of depth under the hood battle system, visit big and bustling cities, explore interesting routes between towns, and become champion of the world. Everything added on top of and around that is the difference between a good and great Pokemon game, but every time Game Freak served that up, it delivers. It is then a little understandable that they are reluctant to deviate from that formula. It's worked over and over again. It's sustained this franchise as a multimedia giant for 25 years now. We have, however, finally reached the stage where they're pushing Pokemon into new worlds, and that is more than welcome. Whether you experience Pallet Town in monochrome, color, or HD, whether it was an NES, Super Nintendo, GameCube, Wii, Wii U, or Switch in the bedroom, Pokemon has persisted and remained so popular through the years because it has something for everybody. Whether you love battling, want to explore new and interesting worlds, or simply want to catch them all, Pokemon caters to you. While this video was focused on the core series, all the spin-offs and the extended media universe that comes with it gives you something to love somewhere. Pokemon was a cultural phenomenon in the 90s, settled into a groove as a hugely successful media franchise, and then became a cultural phenomenon once again with Pokemon Go in 2016. It takes something really special for that to happen. 25 years, 8 generations, countless spin-offs, and over 800 Pokemon later, the series still has that ability to connect. We all still live in a Pokemon world. Wanna be the greatest master of them all, greatest master. Thank you so much for watching. It's been fun to go down memory lane and play through a bunch of Pokemon games this week, because Pokemon's a fun series and one of the more important series of my childhood, and it's one of the series that has persisted through my entire life. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, if you watched all this way, throw a subscribe. I might make more Pokemon videos in the future. I might look at X and Y in more depth in the future. Follow me on Twitter at GarrettKidneyGA or ETTKIDNEY. On your left, my video about Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee. And on your right, my retrospective review of Super Mario Galaxy 2. Thanks for watching.